Hello, Darshan Maharaja here. I'm sure you are aware of yesterday's report in the Globe and Mail that the then Defense Minister Harjit Sajjan, during August 2021, when the Afghan government collapsed and the Taliban were taking over, and a lot of people had to be evacuated from that country, that Harjit Sajjan basically ordered the Canadian military forces stationed in Afghanistan to organize a rescue mission for 225 Afghan Sikhs. Uh, and that mission ultimately could not go through because the Afghan Sikhs left the rendezvous area. Now, I'm not going into the merits of the claims on both sides, because my opinion is that these debates never get settled in Canada. Uh, I have written a couple of articles on that, and in one of them, I have pointed out that Pierre Elliott Trudeau came out with a national energy policy, and 40 years later, there is still equally divided opinion on whether it was a complete disaster or a potential boon that Alberta was foolish to reject. I mean, the arguments on both sides are still as filled with emotion, and it seems like no ground has been covered in more than 40 years. So I'm not going into this case. You can take recent example, for example, SNC Lavalin or We Charity. You pick any controversy of the day and review it years later, and you will see that it is unresolved. So I'm not going into that. But I did notice that one particular argument has resurfaced, which is that foreign born Canadians should not be able to hold public office. Uh, and by public office, I assume they mean elected office, because there is office in public sector also. And there also, maybe the argument can be extended, but I have seen it being made mostly in relation to elected officials. And the underlying premise, as far as I have understood, is that uh, the loyalty of the foreign born Canadian is not a guaranteed thing. Now, instead of getting emotional about this, let us analyze this. But before I do, and I want to analyze this from the opposite direction. But before I do that, a couple of points that I want to add here. One is that to the extent that this is a problem or seen to be a problem, it is because of our peculiar form of multiculturalism, which, as I have expanded earlier, has morphed into multipoliticalism. So, people who arrive from different countries never leave the political space of that country. And if it is happening in a private setting at the individual level, nothing wrong with it, because when you have spent 20, 30, 40 years in a country of your birth, which also happens to be your native place, then it is natural for that bond to continue. You cannot just cut it off and start a new, barring exceptions. So at an individual level in private life, I don't think we need to be alarmed. But the problem is that our form of multiculturalism rewards the practice of that multipoliticalism in the public sphere. So there is all the more incentive, because one gains political mileage or political weight or acquires political heft by practicing foreign politics in Canada. And this is not just necessarily of the country itself, but a country that somebody wants to establish, such as Khalistan is the most known name, but there is also Balochistan. So, and I'm sure there are other, groups that seek to establish their own country within, the boundaries of the existing country that the area falls in. So we have incentivized multipoliticalism to the point that it has become relevant in propelling certain individuals into positions of political power. That is where the problem lies. Now, having put that preface, let me get to my main argument here. The premise that being born abroad, not in Canada, puts an automatic question mark on a person's loyalty cannot be tested because until someone is disloyal to Canada, you don't know whether they are disloyal to Canada or not. And you cannot go around suspecting every individual of being a traitor. So the logical way, the way you can rebut that argument or examine that argument in in a logical fashion is by opposing coming from an opposite direction. So the opposite direction is if that premise is to be taken at face value, that being born outside Canada puts an automatic question mark on a Canadian's loyalty to Canada. The opposite premise would be, the mirror image of that premise would be that being born in Canada is guarantee of a person's loyalty to Canada. Now, is that true? We have to explore this issue. Over the course of the years, I have heard a lot of statements about this or that politicians, and I thought maybe I'll compile a list. And just to be clear, I don't necessarily agree with all these statements. I'm just saying what a lot of people were saying. And that is, Justin Trudeau has destroyed Canada. Before him, Stephen Harper destroyed Canada. You know, that 30-year contract or 30-year agreement with China, Foreign Investment Protection Act, which is supposed to go until, I don't know, it was signed in 2010 and it's supposed to, I mean, nothing that Justin Trudeau can do to uh, reverse its supposedly harmful effects. So both Justin Trudeau and Stephen Harper, having been born in Canada, have destroyed Canada. So is there a question mark on their loyalty to Canada? Okay. Now you come to Stephen Guilbeault, who is widely reviled on the political right and equally adored on the political left. Although on the left, I think people are now beginning to tire of him. He's too much of a maverick, let me put it mildly here. Then there is Chrystia Freeland, who even a couple of days ago, Kevin O'Leary, and full disclosure, I am not a fan of Kevin O'Leary, but to the extent that he has a following on the airwaves and online, he was saying that she is incompetent. Now, a completely incompetent person in a portfolio as important as that of finance would be disastrous for Canada. Then you have Defense Minister Bill Blair, whose ignominious record as Toronto Police Chief is well known. Even the ombudsman said that under his leadership, uh, there was the instance of largest breach of civil liberties in the history of Canada during the G20 summit in Toronto in 2010. And this being Canada and it being politics, he fell upwards. So he got elected to MP and then got made a defense minister. Now, is this person working in the interest of Canada 100%? If you want to apply the test of where someone was born, then I think the question arises. And then there is this whole gamut of World Economic Forum uh, accusations. Anyone who has had anything to do with World Economic Forum is necessarily a traitor to Canada, working against the interests of Canadians. Now, pretty much the entire cabinet and a few other MPs in the opposition have had connections with the World Economic Forum. So are they loyal to Canada or not? And if we want to explore that question, do we make it relevant as to where they were born? That is the focus of my inquiry today. Now, this is federal level. Then you have provincial level where There is this widespread opinion in Ontario that the combo of McGuinty and Wynne destroyed Ontario. Before him, Conservative Premier Mike Harris was supposed to have destroyed Ontario. Before him, NDP Premier Bob Rae is supposed to have destroyed Ontario. So all of them are busy destroying Ontario. They are all coming from different political parties and different political ideologies, but one thing that they have in common, other than destroying Ontario, is that they were all born in Canada. So once again, we have a refutation of the argument that the place where one is born is not necessarily a good test of whether they are loyal to Canada or they are going to destroy Canada slash their province slash their city. It's an irrelevant argument in my opinion. Elsewhere also, for example, you see Rachel Notley in Alberta, and there is a solid school of thought that she destroyed Alberta. And some years ago, I was in a Facebook conversation back when Facebook was relevant app for such conversations. Now it's not. But someone who is solidly NDP told me that, for 40 years, conservatives were in government in Alberta and they frittered away the, advantage of oil revenues. Now, she used a different word than frittered away, but I'm being family friendly here. So that is one case in Alberta. In British Columbia, you see how things are going downhill, especially socially. All the drug addictions, and it's an epidemic of opioid addictions, drug addictions, where Premier Abbey is not particularly keen on taking any remedial steps because the argument goes that he is more concerned about his political survival. Before him, John Horgan, who also allowed this to grow, and he was always opposed to fossil fuel energy, but after quitting politics, he joined the coal mining company as an executive, I think. I'm not sure what designation he got. But when he exited politics, the talk was that he had some kind of cancer. And yes, everybody's sympathy was with him, including mine. But then he goes and joins a company that would have been his mortal enemy in his political career. So are these politicians also destroying British Columbia? Or Christy Clark, under whose tenure the whole money laundering thing became an industry? So where the person is born is not uh, the right factor. It is not the right lens through which we should see it. But the question is, why do we keep getting all these politicians in such copious numbers? It is because we elect bad politicians. And that is because the whole political process, or the machinery, if you can call it that, all the way from grassroots electoral district associations and nomination processes, and all the way to elections and party leadership, etc. That whole thing has gone seriously off rails. As a result, number one, good people are not attracted to it. And secondly, good people are not going to succeed. It requires a lot of backstabbing and all the other shenanigans, about which also I have written. If you can go to darshanmaharaja.ca and check out my article, Nominal Representation, I've detailed my observations on all this. So the whole process is, in a shambles, and it is pretty much guaranteed to bring the wrong people to elected office. I mean, when you are voting in an election, you know how all these candidates, among whom you have to choose one, all of them came on that ballot via the same process. So it's like Frederick Forsyth has written Devil's Alternative. That's the title of his book. And he has explained on the cover of the book what he means by that term. where the devil says that whichever way I choose, men are going to die. So we have sort of a devil's alternative here. Wherever you put your axe, you are only going to get, I mean, the probability is higher that you are going to get a crappy politician representing you. So let's not focus about where Sajjan was born or where Justin Trudeau was born, because I hear that also. Yet another Quebec prime minister. Okay, you have a political process that keeps bringing Quebecers to the office of prime minister. So blaming Quebec or berating the individual is is unproductive. Do something about the process that brings them to that office. Again, I say, don't focus on where a Canadian was born. Look at the process by which they are brought to elected office. And if you clean up that process even by 20 or 30%, you will see a marked improvement in the quality of our politicians. That's what I wanted to say today. Let me know what you think in the comments. Until then, goodbye and be well.